أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله أصحابه أجمعين. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. This is the last session and you sound like it. MashaAllah. I want to first give a big shout out to all of those who are in the audience who are connected to young Muslim sisters. You will respond to the takbir. Only young Muslim sisters, not sisters young at heart. So let's be clear. Ready? Young Muslim sisters, takbir. Okay, let's see where the brothers are. Young Muslim brothers, takbir. What just happened? All of you are sitting here? We should do fundraising on that side then, inshallah. I'm the last speaker, and it's not easy because, mashallah, tabarakallah, so much has been said in this topic, in this session. And the danger also is with the last speaker is that sometimes the speaker goes on and on and on. And it happened that a speaker went on and on and on, and slowly every single person left. And he kept speaking. There was only one person left in the audience, in the front seat, front row. So when he finished speaking, saying everything he had to say, nothing else was left to say, he got down and he went to them and he said, you know, every single other person left. He said, why did you stay? He said, I am the next speaker. So there is no next speaker, inshallah. Everybody who needed to speak has already spoken. And I think we'll be, inshallah, concluding very soon. The biggest question to ask whenever you hear a topic that reflects the legacy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whose birth occurred in this month of Rabiul Awwal, is to bring to mind the tremendous sacrifices he made so that we could not only through him receive the revelation of the Quran, but as equally important, receive a manual on how to live life. So before talking about transforming anyone else, we have to look inwards and see what is our condition. How much are we learning of our own religion? How much of what we know are we practicing? And how much of what we practice is considered of high quality? I was so happy, mashallah, to see Ustaza Sumaira here, because my own mother is a very dedicated ICNA Sisters wing member. Every halaqah, every anything, constantly on the phone, constantly on Zoom, taking notes at her age, mashallah, because she says you can never stop learning. So if you think about it and you realize it, you can. I am definitely a product of my parents, and in fact, this is what we're saying. That if you think about it, transformation cannot occur if the mind has become stagnant and the thinking and the processing and the acquisition of new content, of new material is not occurring in a systematic way, as Sheikh Abdullah mentioned earlier. If the question is to be asked, are we ready to transform society? We have to then answer, are we ready to carry this heavy burden? It is not a light burden. And indeed, the Prophet ﷺ was told in the earliest surahs, Surah Muzammil, Surah Mudaththir, one particular line, verse 5, Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila. That indeed we are about to descend upon you, to give you a word that is heavy in weight. Heavy in weight. And I don't want you to pass over this. I want you to look in the seerah. And I want you to understand that when revelation occurred, it really was very, very taxing, physically taxing upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ijaz mentioned the trip to Taif, a very taxing, physically painful trip, because they literally hurled stones, and they got people who were not mentally well and children to throw stones and rocks upon him to humiliate him. And yet he never wavered from the mission. He never said that, he never let his ego take over and say, they did that to me, do you know who I am? Many of us go through this all the time, embarrassingly sometimes in front of our children, like you can't board the flight on time, something else goes wrong at the restaurant, and we're always like, do you know who I am? And the people around you are like, we don't really care. He never once said, do you know who I am? In fact, he transformed society in a way, in such a humble way, that often delegations would arrive to meet with him. Delegations would arrive to meet with him, and he would be in a jalsa, in a gathering, and they would actually have to lower themselves to ask, which one of you is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He was not sitting on a better seat than everyone else. He was not demanding titles that we often ask for ourselves. He was just among them, giving them the dawah and delivering the message. What can we share with those around us? And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, Islamic Circle of North America, since its founding, and it precedes in founding many of the other organizations that came later, even the Muslim Student Association of the US and Canada, which was formed over 60 years ago, we just celebrated its 60th anniversary. Those who founded ICNA were actually preceded that, and actually were part of a halaqah, which if you are an observant Muslim in America, in North America, you're bound to say, why does that organization have the word circle in their name? It literally came out of the Urdu speaking halaqah, the circle of knowledge and learning. They said that's exactly it. We go from halaqah into circle, we become the ICNA. Right? Yeah, you can clap for circles, yeah. Just don't clap for triangles. So, because that's Trinity. So the idea becomes what? That if you look to see, dawah is central and critical. The delivery of the message is central and critical to the transformation of self, first and foremost. It is central and critical to the transformation of the family, number two. And it is central and critical to the transformation of society ultimately. Why? Because the units that make up society are family. Our family. I'm in social work, as was mentioned. Now we're getting different statistics, different research. One of the ones that really baffled people was, in society, what is happening with the rate of divorce, at least in the United States? They said, oh, look at that, it's strange, but the rate of divorce is declining. Isn't that good news? People looked a little bit further. Because if the family was falling apart, that was a source of alarm, because a stable family, a coherent family, a loving family, a family that is together would indeed be units of units that could make up society. So when they looked one step further, guess what they found out? It was not good news at all. At all. If you value family, if families, a transformed family will transform society, suddenly you found out what? That it's a matter of public record when you register a marriage. It is also a matter of public record when you dissolve a marriage. So when they looked at the rate of divorce, they found that the number of divorces had gone down. But do you know why? Because the number of registered marriages had gone down. So more people are living together without ever declaring a marriage. And suddenly you realize that we as Muslims are commanded to reflect on who created us, how and what gender did He create me, and what is His wisdom in creating me in exactly the gender that I'm supposed to be, and then in the sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that I complete the covenant of society by actually marrying someone of the opposite gender, to be able to do what? To procreate and to then result in additional members of society. So when you look at that, you start to realize, subhanallah, there is so much Muslims can contribute. There is so much we can give to society, but first we have to work on ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates a structure. In the Quran, it is very clear. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّهُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, your Lord ordained, He decreed that you worship none other than Him. But imagine a society that only focuses on worshiping Allah and then nothing else is important. What would happen? No one else would get any attention. So who are the critical people? After talking about worshiping Allah, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. That show respect, unconditional love, compassion. And we had a session with the converts and the reverts, brothers and sisters this morning. Even if you become Muslim and they are not Muslim, or you become more practicing and they are not practicing, don't you dare disrespect them, because through Allah they brought you into this world. And if we can show the rest of society that when we Muslims are with our parents, they are the most loved people on this earth. And until you see the tears in the eyes of those who have lost their parents, then you will realize truly what is that connection between a parent and their child. And then even worse, recently with the sudden deaths of younger people, when a parent has to bury their child, and then you will see the connection. So we as Muslims owe it to ourselves to look at the legacy of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Someone who emphasized family so much, and so much of the hadith have been repeated, but we forget is that his life began without a father. He never saw his father. This was his test. His mother, he was only 6 years old when he lost his mother. And then ultimately, subhanallah, he was in the company of a grandfather, of an uncle, of a beloved wife, much older than him, all of whom nurtured him into becoming the one who would bear the heaviness, the heavy weight of prophethood. Why? Because if he succeeded, then the transformation of the entire world would occur. Why? Because there was going to be no more revelation. There were going to be no more prophets being sent. And that's why he was and is the last and final messenger. And because of him, the companions who followed, the young women and the men, those who took to heart the words of the Quran, those who took to heart his role modeling, his behavior, all of what he put out, they took it in, internalized it in such a way that there was not a corner of the world that was not touched by Islam. And there was not a corner of the world where the quality of life improved when Muslims came into those lands. Brothers and sisters, this is our legacy. It cannot be a distant past. It cannot be something we brag about. It cannot be something we bring out to our children to just tell them what we used to be. No, indeed, the word of the Quran is alive. The messenger has passed away. His example has not left us, because every single one of us who aspires to follow the Quran and the Sunnah, we uphold the power, and we have the power within us to transform the rest of society. So what does that look like? I travel, Sheikh Abdullah travels, Ustaz Sumair travels, and we meet people on the plane. More and more and more, America and North America is graying, is aging. The elderly are increasing in number. Even in the Muslim community, the number of parents being put into nursing homes, being put into older adult homes, being put into retired living or independent living or whatever living, except that I shouldn't have to care for them. This is not our tradition. This is not our tradition. The legacy of the Prophet, peace be upon him, tells us that indeed, and Ustaz Sumair mentioned this hadith, that he indeed equated that you will not be in my community. You cannot be in my community if inside you is harshness and roughness towards children. Man lam yarham saghirana. That's the idea of rahmah towards the young. This would never result in the unborn child being aborted. This would never result in child abuse and neglect and starvation of young children, because a state cannot take care of the most vulnerable amongst us by feeding the families and the children who are in need. We are sitting around as Muslims with our stomachs full, with eating beyond our capacity at these restaurants that are serving buffets and all of these things, when the Prophet, peace be upon him, said what? That one who goes to bed with his stomach full, he is not a believer, knowing that their neighbor and their stomach is hungry, is empty. This is not just Muslims. The neighbor's rights are for every neighbor. So if we are to transform society, we have to begin at home. We have to begin with our children. We have to begin with our parents. We have to begin with our neighbors and extend it out and out and out until what? Until every person in every neighborhood says, if you want your neighborhood to be the best neighborhood on earth, invite more Muslims to move into your neighborhood. Not the opposite. Not the opposite. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, was actually a neighbor to others. He decided he was going to move. That his neighbor was going to move. His neighbor was Jewish. And his neighbors put the house up on sale, and you have a home appraisal, you have a certain value. People knew what houses were worth in that area. They went to him, how much do you want for your home? He said, this much. They said, it's much more than what it costs to live in this area. And he said, if you knew the neighbor that you will get by living in this home, you will pay whatever it is that I ask you. Are you that neighbor? Have you moved into a neighborhood? Have you gone around and put pamphlets and welcome letters into mailboxes of your neighbors or at their doors and let them know that a Muslim family has moved into this apartment building? That a Muslim family is now your neighbor. Why? Because with the believer, you are safe from my hand and my tongue. I will never harm you, because I am the legacy of my beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is something we have to take to heart. This is not just words. It cannot be just conventions and conferences on the backs of the organizers and the volunteers until 10 and 10 and 10 and 10, and every person who attends takes one message and then puts it into practice. Takes one message and puts it into practice. So move a step further back. What about neighbors? Well, I said, get to know them, number one. Be those who in that neighborhood don't wait for a snowstorm before you inquire about groceries of the elderly in that neighborhood. Don't wait for the snowstorm before you go and tell your children, get up, get off the couch and go and use the snowblower or the shovels and clear up their sidewalks. Clear up their driveway so they never have to lift a finger, and let them look out and let them see you in your hijab, in your beard, in your kufi, and let them know that it was the Muslims who came to serve humanity. Why? Because through serving humanity, we end up serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, if you can feel the impact people have who are Muslims, who are honest, and who bring that ethics of trade and of every profession, you will know that that was our legacy. That same Quran and Sunnah they followed, we follow. So if they could do it, we can do it. Even the merchants who went into different lands throughout Africa, throughout Asia, they brought with them such amazingly high standards of ethics that people who they came into contact with immediately wanted to know, what is the way of life that you follow that you have such a high standard? What is the way of life that you follow? Because I want my daughter, I want my son to marry into your way of life, because it uplifts everyone around. We almost don't use the check anymore, but we used to use checks. The check came from our legacy. The check transformed the way Muslims did business. The Muslims were the ones that went into other lands. They said, we have goods and we have all of this, products to sell. And people would say, well, how do we trust each other? They said, it's simple. If I tell you that I'm going to bring you 1,000 kilos of something, you will get exactly 1,000 kilos of something. And here is a note of promise. A note of promise that this is how much will be delivered and this will be my payment. That became the modern day check. And that ethics, it can't be that our neighbors are afraid of us. Our neighbors think that maybe we might hurt them or hurt their property or steal from them. This is not us. This is not us. Our neighbors should be thinking, tell me where there's a Muslim car mechanic. Tell me where there's a Muslim who is selling meat, because I noticed when I read about halal, it really is healthy for everyone. Tell me where that is. Tell me about the restaurants that don't use the cheapest of oil, whereby every one of us knows, and we do homeopathy, and the Dr. Saab tells us every time, if you want to really feel sick, go and eat in these restaurants, because that's what's causing your sickness. I'm not saying don't go out to eat, but let them know, I'll pay you $2 more or $5 more, but can you just use a better quality oil in your production, so that none of us have to be sick or hurt from the consumption of this food. So if you think about it, the standard bearer of society and civilization has been, is today, and will always, inshallah, be the Muslim who is following the Quran and the Sunnah. And as I close in the last two things, is moving step back from the neighbors and the ethics of being in the neighborhood and being good business people, being good colleagues, into creation. Brothers and sisters, even though many of us are not accustomed to having pets and so on and so forth, we have to look around. And we have to be able to see what is happening. How is the meat being produced, for example, for our consumption? How is it that eggs are so cheap and so plentiful? How is it that the chickens, suddenly when we were growing up, even the leg and the thigh and the pieces of the chicken were average size? How is it that we don't stand back and say, what? How is it that these are such huge pieces of chicken? If you didn't know and you don't know now, understand the fact that the steroids and the hormones that are being, basically forced into these chickens to produce bigger pieces of meat, heavier pieces of meat, more eggs, more frequently, are causing them so much pain that the chickens themselves, and there are videos to show it, the chickens cannot even withstand the weight of their body on their feet and their legs, and they literally crack and they literally fall down. And I'm saying to myself, how is it that Muslims are a part of a society that we are not having rahmah on the creation, that we are not demanding that the farmers and all of the corporations that are producing this meat and all for our consumption are actually killing us with our permission, because we keep going back to them and back to them and back to them. If we elevate the quality of the food being consumed, we will not be the only ones who will be healthier. It will be every single other person in every other part of the world who will also be healthier. A Muslim never only thinks about their own well-being without thinking about the well-being of those next to them and around them. In the last part of this is the environment. And I think it's so painful, subhanAllah. It is so painful to think that not only is consumption just off the charts for Muslims, I mean off the charts, like it's insane. It's insane what we have done to ourselves. It's insane that children hear their parents in a car ride from a dawah or a party or whatever, driving back, saying, I can't believe they only had chicken. And they didn't serve lamb and goat and fish and blah and blah. And the children are listening. And we are coming from a tradition in which the Prophet ﷺ actually not only said about the thirds of water and air and food, but he actually, about his life, his beloved wife, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, said that in our home, sometimes the smoke would not be seen for 3 months at a time, which means in those days, no warm food was being cooked. No meat for sure was being cooked for 3 months at a time. If we want to transform society, follow the legacy of the person who sacrificed so much for us so that our health would be better, our physical and behavioral, mental health would be better, by detaching ourselves from the roughness of consumption and the aggression with which we approach consumption. And it is possible. It's completely possible. But we have to ask ourselves, when will we do it? Will every convention just repeat a different message and then no change will come? Or will we say that the environmental crisis can be not reversed because we've done so much damage to the planet, but can we at least constrain and limit the impact? Can we at least say to ourselves, this wudu that I'm making to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shouldn't I do it with khushu'? Shouldn't I do it with ikhlas and intention and sincere intention? And shouldn't I say that this tap of water that I just flick on and let run and run and run while I'm checking the phone and talking to people and making wudu to stand in front of Allah, and I don't fear the fact that I've wasted nearly 1 or 2 gallons of water just trying to make wudu? Like what has become of us? How did we become to this point? Only because we forgot the man who brought us this religion. He himself, about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. That we would have sent you not, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, except that you came as a mercy to all of creation, which means protect the planet and be the best people on earth who protect the planet. Which means protect creation and be the best people on earth who protect the creation and be the best people on earth who protect their neighbors. Neighbors whom? And I'll close with that. Neighbors whom? If you are sick, they will come to inquire about you because they miss your company. They miss your smile. They know that your children hold the door open for them at libraries and at shopping malls. And they know that it is your children who go and shovel their sidewalks and driveways, mow their lawn in the hotness of the summer. It is the Muslims. By transforming the family will inshallah help to transform society. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala return all of you safely to your homes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you to benefit from all of the messages, from all of the scholars that have been shared on this stage in the last 2 days. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indeed bless the founders of ICNA, of young Muslims brothers, young Muslim sisters, and can't forget Mikna. All of this is done for you. May you benefit from these lessons, so inshallah we can benefit as a society. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.